Hi, I'm Garm1, and this is Midgardia RPG's cool crowdfunding show. I'm here today with James Lang from Vorpal Board. How's it going, man?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so why don't you tell me about Vorpal Board? It's an excellent name, and yeah.
Vorpal Board is a platform for playing tabletop games online with friends using the actual pieces. So, essentially, what it is you put whatever you want out on your table, and then you mount a smartphone above the table, and it will stream everything that's sitting on the tabletop in really high resolution photos to remote players so they can interact in a web browser with what you have on the tabletop. And so we have kind of a virtual space that they can go and use their pointers and click and zoom and rotate and all those sorts of things that you would expect. And then the local players can just actually sit at the table and play the games. And we do have, in addition to the table streaming, so that's one piece, and then the other piece is what we call card scanning, and that lets you scan in physical pieces of the game. So cards if you need to, or maybe little tokens or whatever. And then the remote players can interact with those as if they're their own pieces. So they can have a hand of cards, or they can look at maybe a character sheet, depending on what you need to scan into the game. And our goal is really to kind of blend physically playing the game with some of the more 100% remote tools that are out there today already, but still let some of the local players actually sit at the table, roll the real physical dice, all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit of a weird thing to get your mind wrapped around at first, but really kind of the goal is to let people play the way they like, but then also let remote players join the games.
That's cool. Yeah, our group is mostly Canadian, but we've got, some people in America. We've had people from Finland. Like, that can be really handy for that. And Tabletop Simulator is great, but, if a couple of you live together or something, it's a little bit awkward.
Yeah, that was the same deal kind of for us. We have some friends that are remote, and then a few that are local. And like my wife and I usually play with some remote people. And like we looked at Tabletop Simulator, we looked at Tabletopia, which is another product that's like more board game specific, and and those things, and Roll20 as well. That's for tabletop games, not board games. Although I think they might have a couple on there. But like the thing for us was like we didn't want to both be sitting on the computer. We kind of wanted to sit there and actually touch the parts, and like I bought this game. I spent the money to get the minis, to get the cardboard pieces. And like for me, part of board games is using the actual components. I really like touching the stuff and feeling it. And so we wanted to be able to do that with our friends. And that's kind of where the kernel of this idea came from, was that desire for us to have it as a tool. And then I started working on it at that point.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's a real pressing concern nowadays with how distributed communities can be.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's one of those tricks where like life starts to get more complicated. So like for me personally, my wife and I had our first child a few years ago, and that just makes it so now if I want to like go play a board game at somebody's house, which normally for us was a nighttime activity, that means babysitters. That means when your baby is super young, you can't really just leave it with a babysitter as easily. So it just was very hard for us to continue our hobby. And the type of games we like, we're not as big tabletop role playing game fans. We're more dungeon crawler board game fans. So like Gloomhaven or Zombicide or Descent, those types of games, which are kind of adjacent to tabletop role playing games.
yeah.
And they're really big to have like a party of people. It's, like you have a group of 4 or a group of 5, and you need to get all of those people together. So it was really tough for us to still do our hobby until we had a tool like this. And we think there are probably a lot of people out there who are in the same boat, where they don't get to play the games they want, or maybe not as optimally as they want, just because they live far away from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. People of my generation who played like 3.5 in dingy garages and stuff. They're
Yeah.
starting to get older, settle down, have kids. Less so than every other generation at my age range, but
Right. Right.
still,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, it's a real problem. It's good. There's some solution for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was a matter of time until probably somebody put together something like this, because it's not necessarily like a totally wild idea. Some of the implementation parts of it were difficult to get kind of all put together. But this is, I think, how people would like to play. So I think it was just kind of somebody was going to get there eventually, and we just hope to be the ones who did it.
Yeah. Uh, so does it run through a like central server, or do you have to host something, or?
Yeah, good question. So there's no the only thing that you'll need to worry about as a player is if let's start with like the host. So the host would have they need to have a smartphone that's mounted over the table, and that would either be an iOS or Android device. And then there's an app that they would download and have installed on their smartphone that would be streaming the board. And then all the players, both the local players and the remote players, all they need to go is just into a web application. So it's just, you know, you go to a website, log in, and then you connect to that game session and you start seeing the table and the cards and all that sort of stuff. So there's nothing to install other than the app on the phone, obviously. And then the model that we have for how this is priced for users is that the host would need a subscription. So the host would pay $5 a month to subscribe to use the service. The remote players are free. The remote players don't need to sign up for anything. They don't need to have an account. Um, I, as a user of this system, understand that a lot of times there's like one person who's kind of like the evangelist of the group, and in tabletop games, a lot of times it's whoever's like the DM, for example. They're doing a lot of work. They're prepping beforehand. And in my group, I was always the one who would like buy the games, read the rules, get everybody ready, all that sort of stuff. And so I am totally okay with the idea. Okay, I need to spend a little bit of money to make this system work for everybody. But I know that if I told my players, like, hey, you got to sign up, you got to pay, like, I think I'd have a lot of people who wouldn't be interested in doing it. So we're trying to make it so those remote players, it's as easy and smooth for them as possible.
Yeah, and $5, that's USD, I assume.
It is, yes.
Yeah. And $5 a month isn't bad. That's about what we pay for the Roll20 like dynamic lighting stuff.
Yep.
Which, yeah, we could get by on without, but dynamic lighting is so good.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried to make it so it was comparable to other systems, you know, and not be an undue burden. But the realities are, when you run kind of like a software as a service product like this would be, there are a bunch of costs like to just keep it going, and so we need to make sure that we'll be able to cover that essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing you want is for a bunch of people to buy this service and then for it to go under in like, 2 or 3 years.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
They're
I think
they're
most players understand that nowadays. I think that there was kind of for a while people really, really saying like they want everything for free, you know, like free tiers and all that sort of stuff. And the problem for us is like we don't want to have ads. We don't want to like share or sell data, which is what a lot of like the free, you know, when you get a free tool, it's free because there's other ways they're making money off of it. And
yeah.
so we're hopeful that people will like the idea of I pay my monthly fee, I get access, I'm not crushed by ads on the site. And then all my remote friends can play with me for free as well. So we think it's a business model that people will support, but we'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's yeah, the classic saying, right? If something's free, you're the product.
Yeah,
And
yeah, very, very, very true in this case. Yep.
do you have a solid commitment not to ever sell data then?
We do, yeah, and you know, like obviously, you know, if 10 years from now the company is acquired by somebody else or something like that, then I have no idea what the future holds. But yeah, what we are absolutely planning with the Kickstarter we're running now and the product plan is no ads, no selling data. And the reality is for those remote players, we're not planning on having them even need an account. So if you have a friend who just wants to join a game session tonight, all they need to know is the code for your session, which is a 6-digit number. Kind of like, I don't know if you've ever played Jackbox. It's a video game that
Yeah.
people can connect to. We want it to feel that ephemeral. You can just sort of connect to it and play, because we're trying to emulate the idea of you calling a friend and saying like, hey, do you want to play a board game? Like, just come over to my house. You don't need to do anything. You just type in the code and you're in. And so those remote players, if they don't want to sign up for an account, they're not going to have to. And you know, I think we're committed to that idea, and that's kind of the trade-off for paying the monthly fee. You know, we're not going to do these things that we think are nefarious, and the way we're going to not do them is we need to have the hosts, you know, pay a fee to use the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, $5 a month is it's not gonna break the bank.
Okay, cool.
If you're
So that was a little pricing test right there.
yeah, well, if you're into board games, you probably have $5 a month.
Yeah, I mean the hobby, it's a fairly expensive hobby. I'm a person who buys a lot of board games, and so the people who are passionate about playing board games and tabletop games, we do spend a lot of money on the hobby. We don't want to take advantage of that fact. So,
Yeah,
but we do think that it will fit with the mindset of people who are passionate about playing games like this. Yeah,
yeah. I don't want to think about how much I've spent on tabletop RPGs over the years.
yeah,
I've got a stack of like 8 books that are holding up my TV. That's how much
yep.
use those ones get. That's probably $100 right there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think about that a lot. I back a lot of stuff on Kickstarter in the board game space, and that's kind of a tricky spot because you just don't know until you get the game if you're going to like it. But then once you get well, if you don't back it, you don't know if you're ever going to be able to buy it again because it might just never get printed again or whatever. And so I think there are a lot of people out there who would like me have like a lot of games in their closet that like sometimes even have like shrink wrap still on them just because they haven't even gotten a chance to play them. We're hoping that like a tool like ours could help with that, like being able to play with the remote players, being able to play with your sister or your brother who lives 1,000 miles away or whatever, could let people have an easier time getting together to play the games, which is really the goal. And we think that's why people will be interested in the idea.
Hmm. And on that topic, do you guys have plans for like a matchmaking service or something like that?
So there is, as part of the Kickstarter that we're running, a plan for having a lobby. So essentially, users will be able to go and chat with other people who are just looking for games or whatever, and then you will be able to publish and say like, I'm looking to play Gloomhaven, let's say, whatever,
Yeah.
and then you can make the games private via a password if you don't want anybody to be able to get in, or public. We're not planning yet. Like, we'd like to get to the point where you might just be able to type in a game name and it just automatically kind of finds you one and does all that sort of stuff. It would be a couple extra little steps to go and search and find the game you want to join.
Yeah.
And so that'll be in there. The tricky part, because I'm a realist here, is the way those systems work is you need to have some critical mass of user base. You need to have enough people on there playing games that are looking for players, so that other people can go and find games. So a lot of the success or failure of that will be based on how many people we have using the system. But our plan, and we're committing to it as part of the Kickstarter, is having the ability to have public games, because I really like the idea of, hey, I want to play Seventh Continent. I have no one to play it with at my house right now. Let me just go find someone who is looking to play Seventh Continent online. And I know a lot of that happens in Reddit and in Discord already for Roll20 and for Tabletop Simulator. So we'd like to have that in the tool.
Yeah, so this will be more like the old school serverless from the
Yes.
CS:GO days than or not CS:GO, but
Right.
like before that.
Right. We're going to use GameSpy as old tech. Yeah, exactly.
Oof. There's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lord. Yeah, as opposed to like the you hit a button. And yeah, queue times are an issue. I
Right.
used to play Smite, 10-minute
Oh,
queue,
okay.
it pops and then you don't get in a match.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sucks. It feels bad. Alright, well, yeah, that sounds really handy. There's a lot of strange games I'm interested in.
Yeah, and there are ones that are hard to play with two, like, and games are a lot of times different, like pretty different if you play them with two versus like playing with five. And sometimes it feels like they're more designed to be played with higher player counts. And it's tough to get all those people together a lot of the times. I mean, one of the games that we use this for a lot is Pandemic Legacy, which is not something you can really do online because you're tearing up the board, you're tearing up cards, writing on the board, all that sort of stuff. And so I play with 3 remote players, only 1 local, so just me local, and it works really well. And that's a game that I just never would have been able to play unless I had this system. So legacy style games are, I think, a good match, and then also, like I said, like dungeon crawler stuff, I think is really good.
Yeah.
And then RPGs are going to be good as well.
Yeah, that hadn't even occurred to me because, like, yeah, now that you mention it, legacy games are perfect for this. I played Risk Legacy back when it came out, and our playthrough of it eventually just stopped because we all kind of ended up in different cities.
Yep.
I think I have the board somewhere. I think I got it.
I
I'm
think
not
I
sure.
see a legacy box behind you. I can't tell
Uh,
what.
that is Legacy Life Among the Ruins.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
tabletop RPG by
Got
Jay
it. Okay.
Isles. It's a
Okay.
post-apoc thing, like generational. adventures. You
Oh, cool.
generate characters each generation, go deal with whatever weird post apoc thing
Oh,
happens,
that's
and
kind of neat.
yeah, it's great. I'm a fan. We backed the Kickstarter for that. It's a big fancy book.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
spent.
legacy games is a great example because like if you want to finish a legacy game, right? Like it's like 13, 14, 15 sessions. And let's say you play once a month sometimes. I mean, my group, that's kind of how it happens. You're looking at like a year of time at least. And people can move or lives can change or whatever. So like just getting to the end of a risk legacy or a pandemic legacy sometimes can be really difficult. And it has been in our world as well. So I'm like I said, I'm sure a lot of people have the same problems. I don't think I'm alone in some of these problems. So
Yeah, absolutely not. There's a lot of people out in like rural towns and stuff like that.
yep,
Um,
yep.
which I guess brings me to another question. How much data does this use really?
So we're aggressively trying to keep it as low as possible. And there's a couple things that we've done to attempt to do that. Is the trick that we're doing to send high quality photos really reduces the total bandwidth needed to stream the tabletop. So we get two benefits from doing the really high quality photos. One, it's less bandwidth because we're not streaming at 30 frames per second or something. And you don't really need 30 frames per second when you're just looking at a board game or a tabletop role playing game. But the other benefit is that we can send images that are a lot larger than 1080p, which is what you're going to get out of a video connection on a cell phone most of the time or on a webcam. And like honestly, you don't want to be streaming 1080p video for no reason, essentially. And so that creates a really significant bandwidth reduction. And the other big one is that the video windows, so the platform does have video and audio chat supported in it. And we're keeping our resolution for the moment pretty capped low on those videos because most of the time you're not making them big. You're not going to make them really huge because you have other elements on the screen, other board elements, and so we're keeping our resolution low because we know that the videos are going to stay small, and then doing our best to just absolutely crush down how much bandwidth we're sending. So we've seen like I haven't seen any major bandwidth issues up to like 6 concurrent players all connected to each other all over the country. We have done a little tiny bit so far of international testing, and that's gone well so far as well. But like I can't speak yet to like if somebody's in a real rural area and let's say they're using like satellite internet or something, they don't have like a cable internet option where they live. I'm not sure about the up rate. So down rate, they're probably going to be okay, but they're going to be sending data to the other players. So we haven't done a lot of testing on like really, really, really bad internet connections yet. But I guess what I am willing to say is like this is going to be way easier to run than like a Google Hangout that has 5 people in it, or like playing an online game on like an Xbox or something like that. So I think we're going to be hopefully able to be supported kind of in a very wide range of connection possibilities.
Right, and with the high resolution photos instead of video model, that should alleviate some of those problems as well. Because if there's an issue, it's not just gonna blank your screen; it's just gonna show the last thing you got, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're on a video connection and the quality starts going down, you start getting weird like audio distortion and then like really pixelation. So like it has worked really well to just be sending the high res photos and then like you said, you always just have the last one. So if you're 2 seconds behind what another player is seeing for a couple seconds, like that's not critical. And there are games that it's more important that you really see stuff moving around a lot. And so people are just going to have to kind of see based on their connections and what games they're playing, what will be the best match for the system. But like the vast majority of games we've played, if we're sending over an image every second or two, like it's totally, totally workable. And the quality is more important than the refresh rate.
Absolutely. And I see you've got I see it's both a scanning thing and there's a little bit of hardware that displays the map and everything.
Yeah, so there's two actual physical pieces of hardware. One is just the arm that holds the phone over the table. And I get a question a lot like why did you do the arm? Like why didn't you just have people like bring their own or buy their own or something. And the reality is, like, I tried a ton of arms that are readily available on the market, and like they're pretty bad. Either they're very hard to adjust, so they're the kind that you kind of bend them. They're almost like goosenecks,
Oh, I
and to
hate
get
those, dude.
yeah, they're very hard to get to like line up exactly where you want them to, and it sort of drives you crazy. And then the other kind are they're kind of like lamp arms with like a hinge in the middle, and most of the time they're way too short. So they're more intended for microphones. Like I actually have one right
Yeah, I
here,
was gonna say. Yeah.
but they're not intended to get high enough off the board that if you play something really huge and you want to stream like the whole tabletop, we just couldn't get it high enough. So what we ended up doing is combining a bunch of different elements that we were able to find together to get a really long arm that has a attachment to hold your cell phone on it that can spin in 360 degrees. So you can get like a lot of adjustment to get the board looking exactly how you want. So that's the arm. And then the scanning box, I actually have it sitting next to me here, so I can show your viewers. But
Ooh.
essentially, it's made out of wood, two different types of wood. It's walnut on the top and then birch on the side, and then it's hinged with leather. And the reason for that is you can actually take it apart. So you can take the top off, and then the hinged part folds down. So if you need to like put this thing away, you can just flatten it out and then put it back in the box. Essentially, we knew that we didn't necessarily want to force people to always have these things sitting out on their desk.
Although,
And the way the box works is it's kind of like a desktop scanner. You have a cell phone sitting in it, and it has a door on the top, and you open that door, and then you put the card. There's glass right here, and if you put the card in there and close the lid, it's recognized from below, and it scans the card and puts it into the virtual space. Excuse me. The reason that we built it this way is that we can always keep the cards face down. So if you have a game where you want to maintain secrecy and you want to give a card to a remote player, you can take it off the top of the deck, put it in here all face down. It scans it to the person virtually, and you've never had to see it. So for games that it's important that you don't know what cards you're taking off the top of the deck, it'll work.
yeah.
Did that all make
Sorry. Good.
did that all make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I was about to say it's good that it's designed so it's face down.
Yeah.
And then you need a separate cell phone inside the box.
Yeah, so you would need so if you're playing games that require card scanning during the game, so real time as you're playing, you would need a second smartphone in the one for the scanning of the excuse me, streaming of the board, and one for the scanning of the cards. And of course, we offer both options. So you could just do the arm with the cell phone up here if you're playing games that you don't really need to be scanning cards real time. Or you could do both, but you would need a second cell phone. The one thing I will say is that the app runs on essentially as bad as you could imagine a cell phone, as long as it can get to like Android 5.0 version, which is like 5-6 years ago. You can use older phones. So we're hoping that that isn't a major turnoff for people to need the second phone. And not every single person in the world has a backup phone or an old phone to pull out of a drawer and use. But that will be currently a requirement that you'd have to have the two, but only for games that you would need to do that scanning as the game is played. So there's a whole host of games that we only use one cell phone for, and then there are some that we use the two.
Right. And if it's a game that doesn't really have a board, like a card game, you could just use the cell phone in the box, right?
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Yep. So every single game, it's a little bit. So our goal is to kind of build a set of generic tools, and we say, okay, well, we can scan the tabletop or stream the tabletop. We can scan cards. You actually can pre-scan cards. So if you're playing a game that has only like 10 cards that you need, you can scan them all in advance and then stream with the device, that same device, right? So every game, I don't want to like scare people away here, but like it's you have to think a little bit and say, okay, well, how do I want to use this set of tools that I have to best play this game? And sometimes we scan the cards in, sometimes we just flip the cards over on the table and people see them. It really just depends on the needs of the game. Which, like we just tried to build a tool set that would let you play as wide a variety of games as possible. It's probably worth noting there's also dice rolling in it. So there's a dice builder that lets you build custom dice. It'll come with a lot of standard dice already built. So, your D6s and D10s and D12s and D8s and all that sort of stuff. But you'll be able to make custom sides and colors on the dice. And then there's a capability called game components, which you can kind of think of them as just like little chits or health trackers, little interactable components that you can put into the virtual space to let remote players keep track of their own stuff. Our goal is to make it so the remote players don't have to ask the local player to like do stuff for them, except for moving their piece around the board. So you do have to point with your mouse and say, "Hey, I want to go there," and then the
Yeah,
local player can move
but
you there. But
you don't have to be like, how much Monopoly money do I have, dude?
you're right, yeah, and like you know, a big one like for a lot of the games I play is like health and experience tracking. You know, like you lose track if you always have to rely on the local player to like, hey, remember to take 2 health off me. You know, and so we wanted to let the remote players kind of keep track of that themselves, so they'll have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I have leg problems. I got invited to a Twilight Imperium game played on the floor once, so I had to do that.
Oh, geez.
Sat on a chair kind of nearby. And I'm like, hey, can you move my piece?
Yeah. Oh man, Twilight Imperium. That is what I have not dipped my toe into yet. So it is intimidating to me.
Yeah, that was 12 straight hours that we
Oh
did,
man.
and I think we had to call it early because it was like 10 p.m. We're all just like, this got boring 4 hours ago.
Yeah, that one's tough. I mean, I don't think I have the mind for it. There's a lot of that just sort of like pre-planning and kind of like building up a long-term strategy that I think I would get really crushed in that game.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't win.
Yeah, well, there's no shame in that.
Yeah. Oh, this is cool, and that's the wood's all laser cut, by the looks of it, eh?
It is, yeah. So the wood's laser cut, and then the design work on it is all laser etched. So all the sides are burned into the sides, and sort of the logo on the front and all that sort of stuff. Um, and then the it's all held together with leather. These are leather hinges, and then like rivets, metal rivets. Our goal was to try to make it so it could like sit next to other nice tabletop accessories, you know, dice towers and DM screens and stuff. Like they all have really nice, not all, but lots of them have really nice, like wood. You know, if you're using like Wormwood Gaming or Elderwood Academy materials or something like that, that stuff's really nice looking and like you want to have it on your table and it's nice to feel and all that. So we didn't want to just have like a plastic thing. We didn't think it fit the
Yeah,
type of people who were going to be using it. You know.
yeah. It's aesthetically very pleasant.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Also, I really like hexagons, so I might be a little biased here.
Yeah, you know, I had some thoughts like, man, am I overdoing it with the hexagon theme? But like I think that the pattern we were trying to marry kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of treasure chesty type feel, but also with a little bit of futuristic pattern work on it. And sort of meet in the middle. So we hope that we accomplish that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and it evokes certain games that use hex based tiles. I'll say,
right.
uh, yeah. Keep getting distracted by the GIF, right at the
Oh,
top there. Every time I see it, it like freezes for a second and then starts moving. I'm like, ugh, it's too early in the
yeah.
morning for things to
Yeah,
move.
sometimes those animated gifs can really take you by surprise if there's a little delay in them.
Yeah,
And so yeah, right now we're live on Kickstarter. We just launched yesterday on the 22nd of April, and we're going to go towards the end of May. And yeah, I think we got around 25% on day one, so we're feeling pretty good. But we got a ways to go.
yeah. You're sitting at about a third if I'm doing my math right,
Okay,
which
cool.
I'm not. No, I'm not. You're like
Okay.
25%. Sorry.
All right. I was about to say, oh man, I got a bunch of backers during this interview. But yeah, I think 20, 25, 26%, something like that, I think last time I checked.
It gives me the dollar values in Canadian, so it's not wrong.
Oh yeah, that's right. Then yeah, that's right. I totally forget that it'll switch it automatically based on your location.
Yeah, I'm not keen on that personally, but that's something to yell at Kickstarter about. All right. So no stretch goals because it's a physical product. Any particularly interesting backer tiers?
So the tiers that we're using are like when I was explaining kind of the pieces, we have one tier that will be just the arm and 12 months of subscription at a discounted price. And then the next tier is the arm and the scanning box, and similarly 12 months of subscription. And then we have a lifetime option. So if people wanted to get into not having the subscription fee, they can pay extra upfront, and then they don't pay any subscription fee forever. And so that's an option that actually has been a little bit more popular than I anticipated. Um, but people, I was talking to some folks and they thought it was a good idea, so we went with having the lifetime option. And then there is one customization option. The back of the physical box has some text that you can generate on it.
Right.
And if you want to, you can customize the back of the box with 2 lines of text, whatever you want to have on there. We can just do text. We're not doing like logo work or anything like that. So if people want to do that, then they'll just give us the text after the campaign is complete, assuming that we successfully fund. We tried to stay away from stretch goals. Like you said, it's a physical product, but also it's just we're first time creators on the platform, and we were kind of hyper nervous that if you don't like plan out your stretch goals well, it can really cause problems with the campaign downstream. I think a lot of people try to, rightly so, they try to generate excitement using the stretch goals, but um, sometimes that can really just screw up their delivery or screw up how much money they make or screw up just timing of the whole Kickstarter, just in the name of weird little one-off things. So we didn't want to risk that. We didn't think we had anything else we wanted to add to the product, so we said, okay, we're not going to do stretch goals. If we one day in the future run another Kickstarter, maybe we'll consider it, but we just didn't feel like we were confident enough to take that risk, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I backed a tabletop RPG like 5, 7 years ago or something. They got all their stretch goals. It's still not all out, and I have since like long since lost any interest in it, which is a tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, whatever. I mean, some people really like that stuff and they like watching you kind of move up the stretch goal list or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think that's a fun part of Kickstarter, generally speaking, and especially in tabletop games and role play and board games.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I said, I mean, we just didn't have enough experience to know if we were gonna kind of just make the campaign worse. Like we didn't we didn't want to make it worse for the backers. We want to get this thing done and out the door as quickly as we can. So
Yeah. Play a little cautious the first time. I got you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep.
So if I'm doing the mental math right on the life subscription, that's the equivalent.
Yep.
It's about 100 USD extra
Yep.
if you want to get the life subscription. So that's 20 months.
Yeah, it
Yes.
essentially is like it's like 2.5 years. So essentially you'd be betting like I'm gonna pay for 2.5 years up front, and then assuming that I'm gonna get it for longer than the 2.5 years. We kicked around what we thought was a fair kind of break point on that, like how long. And we chatted with a bunch of people, and that's kind of what we came down on. Um, and that the lifetime subscription is currently a Kickstarter exclusive. That's the only thing that's a Kickstarter exclusive, is the ability to do the lifetime subscription.
Right.
So everything else, our full plan here is to manufacture these and let people sign up for the service after the campaign. If people want to wait and do it after, that's totally fine. We just love having people interested. So the plan is not that we're going to make 10 of these or 100 of these and then never make them again. So you'll be able to get in after the fact if you want to kind of play the wait and see.
Excellent. Yeah. See how the server side stuff ends up working out and all that.
Yeah, yeah, and just I think we know that what we're trying to do here is a little bit of a weird thing, and we've run into our share of kind of, I don't want to say like doubters, but people who look at it and they're like, I don't know if that's going to work. We're confident in it because we use it all the time, but if the first time you've seen it, a lot of people might think it's questionable or whatever. So
Gimmicky
um,
or yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it does change the way you play a little bit. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, "Oh, it's exactly like sitting at the table," because that's a lie. Obviously, it's a
Yeah.
little bit different. And the local players usually have to adopt some more responsibilities. So, like, I, as a local player, have to kind of like keep track of what's going on with other people's pieces to make sure they're in the right spots and things are getting updated appropriately if they're not things I can scan in. But I've really found that once you get past that initial, just sort of like getting used to being it remote, it fades away pretty good. Where it more feels like you're playing together because you got the video chat too. It just sort of like you still get that feel of hanging out together. If you use Roll20 and you video chat during it, you probably have the same experience where it's like, oh, it still feels like we're all together, even though we're not physically in the same room. So
Yeah, only difference is I can't smack a guy upside the head when he's being insulted.
Right, yeah, we don't have an interface for, like, hitting anyone yet.
Right, right. No automatic slapping technology. That's a stretch goal
Right.
for the next one. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, that'll be the next time we're on Kickstarter. It's some sort of strange biometric arm that will attach to your computer, yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't brought up that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. If anybody is interested in sort of following along, they can hit the Kickstarter and there's like a remind me button on the Kickstarter itself, and that will I don't think you'll get emails about updates there. I think that'll just remind you with 48 hours left in the campaign. But if you're interested in getting like our monthly newsletter or like our newsletter, we really don't send it very often. So we try to be respectful of everybody's email inbox. You can hit us up at vorpalboard.com. That's VORPAL board.com. And there's just a sign up for our newsletter there. And I'm pretty active on Twitter and Facebook, and then also we Twitch stream a lot. So if you're curious about actually seeing it run, that's a really good spot to see it and actually ask us questions and interact with us, and sort of say, "Hey, scan a card. I want to see it appear," or "I want to see you rotate that thing," or "Prove to me that you can zoom in," or whatever. We're not insulted by people wanting to see how it works. So we're trying to be as transparent as we can, and let people just sort of come and check it out. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, check us out on Twitch. And then we got a bunch of stuff on YouTube or whatever. So just like all the social media platforms, we kind of have covered. But yeah, hopefully you think it's a cool idea. And if not, I'd love to hear from you too. Like I'd love to hear about people who have tried doing this sort of stuff in the past and headaches they've run into, and make sure we're hitting, that we're solving all the problems that we think we're solving. So yeah, please reach out if you have any sort of opinions on the idea.
All right. Oh, one last question before we sign off. What's your
Yeah.
favorite board game?
Yeesh. Oh, that's a tough one. Eh, the game that I would say is my favorite game, like I'm gonna say right now, and right now it's probably a competition. So I'm not even answering your question, but it's kind of a competition between Gloomhaven and Root. And I like them both for two different reasons. I like Gloomhaven just because it is that like party feel where you're all working together to try to beat the game, kind of. And I really enjoy that. I love co-op games. But the reason I think that one is sets aside from some of the Fantasy Flight, Descent, Imperial Assault type games is I really do like the card mechanic for how you define your moves. It's not just I have 4 actions. Okay, I'll move to shoot, shoot. It's like you got to look at your cards and figure out little synergies. And all the cards are really different. So every turn is very, very different. And I think that resists kind of like the hive mind or groupthink when you're playing a co-op game where like everybody is just sort of perfectly optimizing each other's turns. Which I think can happen on board games a lot, where everyone's like, okay, well then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then it just sort of feels like you're doing math or something. But Gloomhaven, I like how dynamic the card system is, and then Root I really like because I don't like usually direct competition games where you're really going at each other's throats, because I feel like that can, for me personally, it ends up just becoming like awkward. Like it's like we were supposed to be having fun together here tonight, but we're like mad at each other now. But the thing about Root that I really like is it's so asymmetric, the game design, that it almost feels like you're all playing your own game and you're all trying to win in a different way because every single faction operates very differently. You are competing against each other, but it doesn't feel as direct as a lot of other games that I've played. So I've really enjoyed Root so far. So those are the two that I like right now. Hopefully that is a good enough. I'm not willing to stake this is my favorite game ever. My brain switches from thing to thing too fast, I think.
Oh man, I know that life. Yeah, we have a giant list of every like tabletop RPG we've ever ran. It's
Yeah.
giant and it's mostly my fault. So
Yeah. And it's the type of thing when you look at them and you're like, I liked that one, I liked this one, I like this. Like, like it's okay to like a lot of stuff. I think sometimes saying like, what's your favorite thing can sort of like insinuate that these other things aren't as good. Like, I think it's okay to just like a lot of things. I don't know.
yeah, maybe I'll start phrasing it as like, what are you into right now in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that new Lord of the Rings game just came out, and I have that on the way. I ordered that one, and it's been getting a lot of a lot of really good reviews. So I'm excited to try that out one. It's just sort of like I'm like you. A new thing comes up, I want to play it. I want to see what it's like. And some of them stick, and some of them end up propping up my desk.
Yeah, I've played some bad things in my time. I'm not gonna name names, but
Yeah, yeah, that's all right.
some things were not worth the money. And that's okay, it's a learning experience.
Yep. Yep.
It's
You wouldn't appreciate the really good stuff if you hadn't played some stuff that you didn't like. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's fun to look at things and be like, why didn't this work? As opposed to just,
right.
this sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the right mindset. Is like maybe it didn't. Maybe I don't like it. I've played a lot of
Yeah.
games that I don't like that a lot of people I respect and enjoy like they really like. So some things just don't click in your brain as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that about wraps it up. It's been great
cool.
talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks for reaching out, and thanks for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll thank Ice Cream Dice again for pointing me your way.
Oh yeah, definitely a big shout out to Ice Cream Dice. Those dice are awesome, and if you have not seen them, you should check them out because he just announced I think mint chocolate chip
Mint chocolate
dice,
crit,
which
yeah.
oh yeah, mint chocolate crit. Sorry, and those dice look awesome. Like they of all the flavors, I like the Neapolitan looking ones too, but that mint chocolate crit that looks legit. So yeah, thanks so much for to him for sort of putting us in contact with each other. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a wonderful guy. All right, well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And have a good one, everybody.
Yeah, take care.